Quick disclaimer before we start the video, this is part 2 of my Ancient Timeline series. If you haven't seen part 1, it's in the description below. In part 1 of this series, we talked about everything from the dawn of the galaxy with the Celestials to how the Jedi and Sith orders were created. Not only that, but we touched on the story of Darth Revan, and how his resistance eventually brought out the true corrupt nature of the Jedi. We even talked about how much wrinkles Yoda's balls have. This is part 2, the final part of my entire Ancient Timeline. By the end of this video, you'll know every single major event that happened in the Star Wars universe, from the dawn of the galaxy to the beginning of Phantom Menace. Also, I keep telling myself I'm gonna shout my Discord out in my videos, but I keep forgetting to do it in the intro. Join my Discord, link in description. If you want to meet other Star Wars nerds and just talk about anything Star Wars or Lego, it's a good time. Check it out. As always, remember to like and subscribe, grab your blue milk, and enjoy the video. I'm sorry if I sound like tired or monotone. I literally got like an hour and a half of sleep last night, so I'm running on hopes and dreams here. At the end of part 1, we left off on the death of Darth Nihilus, Darth Traya, and Darth Sion. These three were arguably some of the coolest 3 Sith in existence, and very shamefully, they got soloed by a Jedi exile named Mitra Sulik. Now you may assume that after slaying these 3 Sith, it was all sunshine and rainbows, and the entire galaxy was a happy place with sparkles and glitter. But no, it wasn't. It was a slow, painful slide into oblivion. Kind of like AI right now, it's just slowly getting worse. Like, they're jacking up RAM prices to like $400 just so some like Fruit Love Island could be made. For nearly 3,000 years, the Galactic Republic entered a real-world equivalent of the Dark Ages. Central government power evaporated, and communication between the core worlds and the Outer Rim became a luxury rather than a right. In this Dark Age, technology even began to move backwards. Pretty much everybody got hit with like a stupid beam. Star systems that once glistened with shimmering skyscrapers and advanced medicine reverted to feudalism. This period also saw a spike in personal greed. Due to limited resources, people were more willing to take from each other for personal gain. Not only that, but in the far reaches of space, the stupid beam hit people so hard that they forgot how to maintain hyperdrives. The Jedi Order, once the shining light of the galaxy, found themselves stretched so thin that they were effectively invisible to the average citizen. At this point, the galaxy was basically just running on prayers. People were greedy, there were little to no resources left, and the Jedi were pretty much just like non-existent. Then around 2,000 years before the Phantom Menace, something changed. A Jedi Master named Phineas, geez, that really does sound like a Discord mod name, like a Discord username, like Phineas, Sir Phineas. God, bro, I gotta get some sleep. Phineas decided that he discovered a truth the Council was too afraid to face. He believed that true power required the total rejection of self-sacrifice. Basically, he thought that in order to get power, that you shouldn't have to give up anything, and that instead you should take from others. He abandoned the Order, stole a collection of forbidden holocrons, and rebranded himself as Darth Rune. Darth Rune did what no one else thought was possible. He united the squabbling Sith tribes and the remnants of the old empires into a singular, terrifying force. This began the new Sith Wars. Similar to the 100-year darkness that we talked about in part 1, this was not a quick campaign. This was a grueling, century-long nightmare that would define the galaxy for the next millennium. Darth Rune's legacy was a cycle of violence that made the Republic lose territory planet by planet until the map of the galaxy was almost entirely red, covered by the new Sith Order. It's very similar to kind of how Hitler rose to power in World War II, where the world is in shambles and people are really desperate to believe anything because they want hope. And at this point, the Republic might as well just not exist. It was spread so thin that people were starting to doubt it. So they were really, they didn't really care what happened. That's what I'm trying to say. With the Republic military in shambles and the Chancellor's office reduced to a figurehead, the Jedi were forced to change. They could no longer be simple monks living in a temple. So to save civilization, they just became the government. This was how the rise of the Jedi Lords came to be. But once the Jedi got a sense of power, as we see later, they don't really want to lose it. Like when, to bring back the peanut butter and jelly sandwich reference, when you finish making that sandwich, you have power over the sandwich, and you don't want to lose power over the sandwich because you just made it and you want to eat it. You want the power over the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. This is what I'm trying to say. These great Jedi Masters took control over entire sectors of space. They built massive stone fortresses on worlds like Tython and Azir. They led private armies and acted as kings, judges, and executioners. While this technically did keep the Sith at bay, it kind of introduced a not cool idea that instead of the Jedi becoming the servants of the people, they were now starting to become the masters of the people. This era blurred the lines between the light and the dark in a way the galaxy had not seen since the ancient wars on Tython. By the final century of this 1,000-year war, the Sith had undergone a radical transformation. A former Jedi named Lord Khan rose to power. He saw that the Sith were constantly getting used to mop the floor by their enemy because they spent more time killing each other than the Jedi. And to kind of fix this, he created something called the Brotherhood of Darkness. Khan abolished the title of Darth. He claimed that all Sith were equal. No more masters, no more apprentices, and no more secret plots. It was a union of thousands of darkside users working towards a single goal, the total extinction of the Jedi Order. Now, the Republic viewed this as a big danger, like tasking Jar Jar Binks with an important responsibility level danger. To a more traditional Sith, however, this was a pathetic mindset and a waste of their true power. So not only did Khan have the Jedi against him, but he also had some of his fellow Sith against him because they thought that Khan's ideals would turn them into like a blind baby riding a bike. So by this point, the Brotherhood of Darkness and the Jedi Order had been fighting for a long time. And while the Brotherhood of Darkness was preparing its final assault, a man named Dessel was working in the Cortosis mines of Apatros. He was a giant of a man. No, like literally, the galaxy has to like blood test this guy for like steroids or something because he is literally a behemoth of a man. Dessel was fueled by a lifetime of abuse and a silent, burning connection to the Force. After killing a Republic officer in a bar fight, he fled to the Sith Academy on Korriban. Yes, even Star Wars has bar fights. The Masters there saw his raw potential and gave him a new name, Bane. But Bane was different from the other students, and not just because he was canonically 6'5" and jacked. He didn't care about the Brotherhood's philosophy of equality. He spent his nights in the ancient libraries, reading the words of Darth Revan and the other old masters. He realized that the Brotherhood was a lie. By spreading the dark side among thousands of weaklings, Lord Khan had made the Sith pathetic. Bane knew that for the Sith to truly rule, the Brotherhood had to be burned to the ground. The final stage of the new Sith Wars took place in the forest world of Ruusan. This was the site of 7 separate, devastating battles. The Jedi Order poured every resource they had into the Army of Light, led by Lord Hoth. It was a war of attrition. Forests were burned away, the rivers ran red, and the sky was constantly filled with the smoke of falling starships. This planet was not somewhere you would want to be. Darth Bane arrived on Ruusan not to help the Sith win, but to ensure that they lost. He manipulated Lord Khan, playing on his desperation and his growing insanity. He convinced the Brotherhood that they could end the war with the single devastating strike that would wipe the Jedi from existence. He fed them the secrets of a ritual so dark that it had been forgotten for a millennia. He was kind of like Palpatine in a sense that he would take advantage of people who were very susceptible to it and manipulate them to get what he wants. Except Darth Bane was like 10 times cooler than Palpatine. Did I mention he's canonically 6'5" and jacked? Lord Khan, backed into a corner and losing his grip on reality, led the Brotherhood into the deep caves of Ruusan. As the Army of Light closed in, the Sith joined their minds together to create the Thought Bomb. Wow, what a name. It was a sphere of pure, condensed dark side energy. It's like the Instagram image of the two brains connecting. That's basically what all the Sith did to create a Thought Bomb. When it detonated, it didn't just explode. It imploded the souls of every Force-sensitive being in the vicinity. Lord Hoth and his elite Jedi were vaporized instantly. Lord Khan and every single member of the Brotherhood of Darkness had their spirits ripped from their bodies and trapped inside a silver orb of eternal vacuum. In 1 nanosecond, the entire Sith were gone. The Jedi believed that they had sacrificed their best warriors to achieve a final total victory. But in reality, Darth Bane fired yet another stupid beam at the stupid Sith and manipulated them to all destruct themselves. In the silent, ash-covered ruins of the battlefield, Darth Bane stood alone. He was the last Sith in the galaxy. He had achieved exactly what he wanted. The weakness of the Brotherhood was gone, and the Jedi were convinced the threat was over. Bane found a young girl on the battlefield named Rain. She had just used the Force to kill 2 Jedi in a fit of rage. He saw in her the future of his new order. He took her as his apprentice and gave her the name Darth Zana. He told her the new law of the Sith. I'm about to drop the iconic line, okay? Get ready. Only 2 there shall be. No more. No less. That's what Darth Bane said. One to embody power, and the other to crave it. The era of the open war was over. The era of the shadow has officially begun. With the Brotherhood of Darkness erased from existence, the galaxy entered a period of deceptive peace. The Republic celebrated the end of the Sith Wars because they thought that they finally erased the Sith from the galaxy. They signed the Ruusan Reformation, a series of laws that stripped the Supreme Chancellor of military power and forced the Jedi to disband their private armies, basically demilitarizing the Jedi. The Jedi Lords gave up their crowns and returned to Coruscant, becoming humble servants of the Senate yet once again. This was exactly what Darth Bane wanted. He and his apprentice, Darth Zana, moved through the galaxy like ghosts. They didn't build fortresses, instead they rented cheap one-bedroom New York apartments, located inside the sewer, inside a volcano. Not actually, but you get the point. They wanted to stay low profile. The Sith duo didn't control armies. They manipulated bank accounts, kind of like every buy now, pay later company does on Earth. The Sith were no longer a nation. They were a virus, quietly replicating in the veins of a host that didn't even know it was sick, aka the Star Wars galaxy. To ensure he remained the ultimate predator, Bane traveled to the demon moon of Duxun. In the dark jungles, he encountered a species of parasites called Orbalisks. These creatures attached themselves to his skin, feeding on his dark side energy and multiplying until they formed a living suit of organic armor. This armor was miraculous. It could deflect lightsaber blades and was nearly immune to blaster fire. It was almost as powerful as plot armor, but the power came at a horrific price. The Orbalisks were constantly pumping chemicals into Bane's bloodstream to keep him alive and aggressive. They caused him perpetual, agonizing pain, ensuring he was always in a state of peak force-fueled rage. It's very similar to Vader's suit, where Sidious designed Vader's suit to constantly keep Vader in pain, so he would always be angry and therefore always stay close to the dark side. That's kind of what the Orbalisks did for Bane. Bane became a walking tank of muscle and shell, a monster that could survive a direct hit from starship cannons. He was the physical embodiment of the rule of two, raw, concentrated power that sacrificed everything for the sake of strength. While Bane provided the brute force, his apprentice, Darth Zana, focused on the subtle arts of the dark side. She didn't rely on physical size or physical skills, instead she relied on Sith sorcery, which basically she could go into the minds of her enemies and make them experience their worst fears. In a duel, she didn't need to strike a killing blow with her double-bladed lightsaber, she just had to make her opponent go insane with a single glance. The Sith duo's relationship was the perfect prototype for Bane's vision. They lived in luxury on worlds like Citric 4, posing as wealthy merchants while hoarding ancient Sith holocrons and artifacts. Every day was a test. Zana waited for a moment of weakness in her master, and Bane watched her for any sign of hesitation. This tension ensured that the Sith would only ever get stronger with each generation. Basically, the Sith duo would always look for a flaw in each other, or always kind of try to find something to like nag at for the other person, and this kind of ensured that the two Sith were constantly improving because they were both just kind of being assholes to each other. It was a dynamic that made them get better in almost every aspect very, very quickly. The secret of the Sith was almost uncovered when a group of Jedi tracked Bane and Zana back to the ancient world of Tython. In the ruins of a Jedi temple, 5 of the Jedi Order's greatest warriors faced off against the two Sith. The Jedi fought with coordination and honor, but they were unprepared for the sheer violence of a Sith Lord who had condensed 1,000 years of hate into his own body. Bane was an unstoppable whirlwind tornado hurricane of destruction, and Zana used her sorcery to turn the Jedi's own minds against them. By the end of the night, every Jedi was dead. The secret of the rule of two remained safe. However, the battle left Bane near death, forcing Zana to find a way to save him just so she could eventually grow strong enough to kill him herself. This cycle of loyalty and betrayal became the heartbeat of the Sith Order. It was basically a tradition for the Sith apprentice to kill the Sith master because it proved that they were ready to become a master themselves. But in the future, this chain kind of breaks when Palpatine kills Plagueis because Palpatine wants to maintain power, so he makes it to where Darth Vader can't kill him. Eventually, the time came for the student to surpass the teacher. Darth Zana challenged Bane for the mantle of Dark Lord. On the world of Umbria, they engaged in a duel that pushed the boundaries of forced combat. Bane attempted to use an ancient ritual to transfer his consciousness into Zana's body, effectively living forever by stealing the lives of his apprentices. Sith sorcery is really just like the most OP thing in existence. Like, you think it can't get really more overpowered, and then it gets more overpowered. But he failed. Zana's will was too strong. She struck down the creator of the Rule of Two and took her own apprentice, a woman now known as Darth Cognis. Very funny name. Cognis. With Bane's death, the Sith had survived their very first transition to power. But it wouldn't stop there. The Sith would continue to evolve, moving away from the physical brutality of Bane and toward the intellectual manipulation of the centuries to follow. For the next several hundred years, the Sith became a line of businessmen, scholars, and scientists. They followed a plan known as the Grand Plan. Each Sith Lord would add something new to the strategy. One focused on gathering vast amounts of wealth to control the galaxy's economy, and the other focused on infiltrating the Republic's judicial system to ensure the laws always favored the corrupt. They were playing a game that would essentially take 30 generations to finish. They also encouraged greed in the Senate. They encouraged arrogance in the Jedi Council, and they waited for the moment when the Republic would become so bloated and ineffective that the people would actually beg for a dictator to take control. This should sound very familiar to you, unless of course you haven't seen the movies. Which in that case, what are you doing here? Go watch the movies. While the Sith were plotting in the shadows, the rest of the galaxy entered a period of expansion and innovation. This was the start of the High Republic, because as the name suggests, the Jedi were at the height of their cultural influence. They were no longer warriors of the Ruusan battlefields. They were symbols of hope and peace. They began a massive project called the Great Works, aiming to bring technology and medicine to every corner of the Outer Rim. To the average citizen, it looked like the Golden Age would never end. The Sith, however, saw the truth. They saw that the Jedi were becoming too reliant on their public image. They were becoming celebrities rather than monks. The Sith sat in their boardrooms like this, knowing that the more the Jedi cared about their public image, the easier they would be to manipulate. The galaxy is currently at its most peaceful point in history. The Jedi are heroes, the Republic is wealthy, and the Sith are a forgotten myth. But peace is a thin veil. The shadows are growing longer, and a new threat is about to emerge out of nowhere, a threat that will force the Jedi to realize they aren't as invincible as they think. The galaxy reached its absolute prime about 200 years before the movies. This was the entire era of the High Republic. The Jedi were like hundreds of LeBron Jameses, wearing robes of white and gold to symbolize their role as beacons of hope. They were no longer just warriors, they were architects, explorers, and diplomats. At the center of this ambition was the Starlight Beacon. This was a space station the size of a city, built in the galactic north. And it was kind of like the Centerpoint Station, but the direct opposite of the Centerpoint Station. Instead of destroying planets, it was there to help them, if you remember what the Centerpoint Station is from Part 1. The Starlight Beacon served as a broadcast hub, a medical facility, and a Jedi temple. It was meant to prove that no matter how far you traveled, the light of the Republic would always find you. But for the Sith watching from the shadows, the Starlight Beacon was nothing more than a huge, big, glowing target. It represented everything they hated: unity, selflessness, and just the entire light side in general. While the Sith continued their secret work, a new kind of monster emerged from the fringes of space. They were called the Nihil. These were not Force users, and they were not a traditional army. They were space Vikings, high-tech marauders who lived by a code of pure chaos. Their leader was a man named Marchion Ro, a tactical genius who harbored a generational hate for the Jedi. The Nihil possessed a secret technology called path engines. These allowed their ships to travel through hyperspace in non-linear ways, jumping through paths that were impossible for Republic computers to track. They could appear inside a planetary atmosphere, strike a target, and vanish before a lightsaber can even be ignited. They turned the galaxy's greatest safety net, hyperspace travel, into a cloak that they can use to just vanish instantly whenever they wanted. Something called the Great Disaster, a massive hyperspace collision caused by the Nihil, destroyed entire moons and sent radioactive debris flying at light speed into populated worlds. This was kind of the start of the decline of the Golden Age because things are starting to get really, really bad. Marchion Ro knew that the Jedi were his biggest obstacle, so he uncovered an ancient horde to deal with them. He found the Great Levelers, also known as the Nameless. These were spindly predatory creatures that fed on the Force itself. When the Jedi stood near a Nameless, their connection to the light was severed. They experienced waking nightmares, losing their senses and their sanity. Man, all this stuff, it would really suck to live in the Star Wars Legends universe. If a Nameless touched a Jedi, the Jedi's body would calcify and crumble into gray ash. Kind of like something Thanos would do. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Jedi felt true primal terror. They weren't just fighting a war, they were being hunted by something that made their very existence a liability. The High Republic began to fracture. The Jedi started to pull back from their outposts. They became more defensive, more paranoid, and more reliant on the Republic military. The monks of the frontier were slowly becoming the soldiers of the core. The climax of this era came with the destruction of the Starlight Beacon. Marchion Ro and the Nile successfully sabotaged the station, causing it to plummet into the ocean of the planet Iram. Not Iran, Iram. Thousands died, including high-ranking Jedi Masters. The symbol of galactic unity was gone. The Republic survived, and the Nile were eventually pushed back, but the damage was permanent. The Jedi Order underwent a massive cultural shift. They moved their headquarters permanently to Coruscant, building a massive temple right next to the Senate. They stopped wearing gold and white, opting for the less flashy drab brown robes that you see in the movies. They believed that they were starting to transition and to become more humble, but in reality they were becoming more like machines that were being used by the government. They had walked right into the glided cage the Sith had been building for them for centuries, not even knowing it. As the High Republic faded into the era of the prequels, the Sith's grand plan reached its final stage. The mantle of Dark Lord fell to Higo Damask, known to the Sith as Darth Plagueis. He was a moon, a species that dominated the galaxy's financial markets. Plagueis was a master of two worlds, the boardrooms of the intergalactic banking clan and the dark practice of Sith science. Plagueis was obsessed with the biological nature of the Force. He believed that if he could manipulate midichlorians, he could achieve the ultimate goal of the Rule of Two, eternal life. He didn't want to just pass on his power to an apprentice, he wanted to rule forever as a God King. He used his vast wealth to buy politicians and create economic crisis, ensuring that the Republic was always in a state of quiet desperation, looking for a leader to save them or guide them. Plagueis eventually traveled to the planet of Naboo, where he discovered a young nobleman named Sheev Palpatine. Palpatine was a prodigy of deception. He had a bottomless pit of ambition and a natural mask of charisma that could fool even the most perceptive Jedi. Plagueis took him as an apprentice, giving him the name Darth Sidious. Together, they were the perfect team. Plagueis provided the money and the dark science, while Sidious provided the political face. Sidious climbed the ranks of the Naboo legislature and eventually moved to Coruscant to become a senator. He spent his days being a polite, helpful public servant and his nights learning the most devastating secrets of the dark side from his master. The pair were the architects of a trap that was now almost ready to spring. Plagueis believed he and Sidious were equals who would rule the galaxy together forever. And he was wrong. Following the core value of the Rule of Two, Sidious waited until he no longer needed his master. On the eve of his own election to the office of Supreme Chancellor, Sidious waited for Plagueis to fall into a deep, wine-induced sleep. Sidious didn't challenge him to a duel of lightsabers. He used Force lightning to slowly suffocate his master, mocking him as he died. Sidious had learned everything he needed. He was now the sole Dark Lord of the Sith, and he was also the most powerful man in the Republic. And the Jedi still had no idea he existed. The ancient history of Star Wars concludes here. The stage is set, the Republic is bloated and corrupt, and the Jedi are blinded by their own politics. And also, to add on top of that, a secret Sith Lord is running the Senate. A trade dispute over a small planet called Naboo is about to be used as a catalyst for a galactic war that will help wipe the Jedi forever. From the birth of the Force on Mortis to the secret laboratories of Darth Plagueis, we've covered 25,000 years of lore. The legends of the past are over, the story of Anakin Skywalker is about to begin. Thank you for joining me on this massive deep dive into the ancient timeline. I really do appreciate it if you made it this far. That means you somewhat enjoyed the videos, so like and subscribe would be appreciated. Also, like I said in the intro, joining the Discord would be sick, so you should do it. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week's video. I think it's the longest video I've ever done, probably. That's gonna be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in next week's video. Goodbye.